So I'm very glad. Okay, we're recording now. Nobody say a bad word. Okay, nobody say a bad word. So I'm very glad to be here with you guys to geek out with you on some of this content. So a lot of this is stuff that I've been pulling together for 10 to 15 years now, and I think it's really important for us to understand the environment that we're in as higher educators. What our students are dealing with, what employers are saying, and really just the nature of work and what's going on out there. And so when I think about the 24 plus years of doing this, 5 different institutions, thousands of students, thousands of employers, thousands of faculty that I've worked with, there's no crystal ball. The stuff I'm going to present to you today is a lot of research that I've collected over the years, and a lot of it even recent with a lot of the changes that we're seeing out there. There's not a magic thing that I'm going to be able to show you that, over the next 10 years, this is what it's magically going to look like. But I can say that from all the research that I've been collecting, that there are trends and there are patterns and there are things that we really need to pay attention to. And so a lot of that is what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. A couple of things of note. You can put stuff in the chat, but I can't see the chat on this Zoom. I just work from a laptop, not multiple screens. But I am more than happy to geek out with you guys after this. So just email me. I will buy you that $80 coffee or whatever it costs these days, and we will geek out and whatnot. If you guys have articles and things that you guys have seen out there, I would love for you to send it to me. I collect things, I read things because yes, I am a nerd. So all of this started with, around the Great Recession. And I noticed that a lot of our students were having a lot of issues finding employment. Employers were not engaging with higher education. And it got me wondering, my gosh, what's going to happen over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of my profession and just the nature of higher education? And so it all started with this one article, and I just started reading it. And all of a sudden, I went down the rabbit hole and I started seeing all kinds of things coming up. And that's what really sparked my interest in what is the research saying and what should we be paying attention to. And I will tell you that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is really about what is the next 10 years. And I'm sticking to that for 2 reasons. One, it's hard to figure out what's 15 and 20 years. I mean, my gosh, who knew that COVID was going to happen? And two, I'm hoping to retire in 10 years. And after that, it's not my problem anymore. So that's kind of what we're going to stick to. Okay, so let's talk about students. And what I've done is I've broken this up into different angles for us to present and look at this research and really try to understand it. So when we think about the students that we are seeing coming in and some of the population trends that we're going to be noticing, we've all been hearing about this cliff, this plateau, this thing that's going to happen with our students. And I'm going to tell you that it's real. So a couple of these graphs are fairly recent, and a lot of the most recent graphs are, pretty much saying the same thing. So over the next, 5 to 10 years, we are going to start to see a plateau of what we call our traditional age students. Now, it's a funny thing to say traditional age students because that's so old school these days. Because what we're actually starting to notice is that what we used to call our non-traditional students are actually becoming more of our traditional students. And so even with that, we're going to have to play around with how we classify or categorize students. So you can see that even in North Carolina, we're going to be starting to see a plateau of the number of this population, this 18 to 24-year-olds coming up around in the next couple of years, if not already. The great news is that we are seeing an uptick or a more diversification of our students coming in to higher education, which is fantastic. That means there's some really good changes for the good in our K through 12 population in terms of serving our students and getting them into higher education in all of its forms. A couple things I want to point out. So National Student Clearinghouse actually estimates that those non-traditional students, about 36 million Americans are in this category where they started college, but then for some reason they had to stop college. And in North Carolina, that number is about 2+ million, roughly figuring right now. And those students, as I'm going to call them, are thinking about coming back into the college sphere in some way to finish their degrees. So 36 million Americans, 2+ million in North Carolina alone. When I say the new traditional is the non-traditional, those numbers are factoring in there as well. In terms of that population drop that I showed you and talked about, Hetrier report predicted that actually we're going to see about a 15% drop in the late 2020s of our traditional aged students. 15% drop in that. And in 2019, the National Clearinghouse report actually showed a 7.5% drop already. And we think about that. And even when we start to factor in what we noticed about COVID and some of the things that we've noticed about COVID, and I think it's still kind of shaking out, is that in terms of new births, we are down maybe about 500,000 on average. That's kind of what they're predicting right now. And we think about, like, why does that matter? Well, we saw a drop in births, new births, in right after the Great Recession, and of course, right after 1918's pandemic. So when you think about the population kind of constriction and the natural plateau and drop of those that we already have out there, that's getting a little scary for the next 10, maybe even 15 years. The other thing that we've noticed during COVID and even till today is that the retirement age folks are retiring a little bit earlier at a faster clip and than what we anticipated actually 5 and 10 years ago. And a lot of that is because of COVID. So we're seeing it kind of on both ends in terms of our workforce. It's constricting and there's becoming an issue. And we're going to talk a little bit why this is going to matter to later on with our employers and even our bottom line. So you think about higher education and how we're funded. Think about this. So our admissions folks, our enrollment folks, and all of you, we've done such a great job this year bringing in our new class of students where, from what I understand from the admissions report yesterday or 2 days ago, we're over 30,000 students. And I think it's like 30,200 and change, if you will. That's fantastic. But when I asked about, like, how does that affect our budget, we're still budget neutral. And we are predicted to be budget neutral next year as well. So even though we've gotten more students, our budget hasn't changed. And a lot of what higher education is built around is get butts in seats so we can get that money so we can do different things. The mixture is changing. So we just rely on just get more students in the door. We've got to continue to encourage students to come to college, retain our students towards success, which I think higher education sometimes does a good job and sometimes forgets about that retention thing, and then making sure that we are lean and mean and awesome as a business, because yes, we are a business. So why does all that matter? Well, we have all this population thing going on with our students, but guess what? There's a lot of research that's showing that the generations of students, they're starting to feel more and more unprepared for work, for career, for that next thing that they're supposed to be doing after college. And this report, the solution report, is actually reflected in a few other reports that I've seen out there. You can start to see that from Gen X, that's me, Gen X, yeah, go Gen X, all the way to our Gen Zs that are currently in our system right now. That idea of the worry, they're not feeling prepared for that next step that's out there. A couple more things I want to point out. So the mixture of these students have changed. So a lot of students these days, these first time in college students, they're coming in with a lot of credit already under their belt, if you will, which means a lot of them might be starting off as sophomores or juniors or some other category. And a lot of our services, a lot of our resources and how we process students might be slightly outdated, meaning we're making the assumption that everybody's coming in as first time college students and they're all freshmen and they still have 2 to 3, 4 more years to go. That's not the case. And so this one size fits all, we have to be very careful about how we're looking at our students, how we're slicing and dicing them to make sure that we are providing them the services wherever they are on that journey as well. We're starting to see a lot more need around upskilling and retraining of current students, students who've already graduated that might be coming back, our alumni, those who are out there and they're just looking for maybe a certification versus a full degree. The game of higher education is becoming a little bit more diversified in terms of what our offerings should be. Students, based on some of the data that we get from Universum from the past few years, and we do a survey of all of our students to understand what are they looking for over the next 5 years, they are very focused on return on investment. They are very savvy and aware of this thing called student debt. How much does it cost me to go to school? What am I getting if I do this versus that? What about your university versus that university over there? they're very much on that return on investment. Every single orientation that I ever do at this institution or any other institution, I always ask them, why are you coming to college? What's your motivation? And for better or worse, they say, to get a job, to better myself for my career. Now, we can debate on whether college is about jobs or learning. I think it's all of the above, but the mindset of our students are around this return on investment. When we think about higher education over the past decade, 2 decades, I mean, what is it, like quadrupled or 5 times the cost increased? And the question is what is that return on investment for that increase in tuition and fees that we're charging our student constituents? I don't know. That's a conversation that I think we should continue to have. Students are very much in connection around personal values. They want proof of this DEI and social impact, and how is my education and your class and the homework that you're making me do, how does that connect into me as a person, my purpose, and what I want to do with my life for, the next 5 to 10 years. They're not looking at 20 years from now. They're not looking at 30 years from now. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to help make that connection better for students. About a week ago, one of my colleagues sent me this slide deck from a North Carolina Education and Workforce Conference that was done in Raleigh. There was a couple cool things that I noticed in there. So they had this graph, and I'm just going to give you some of the stats because I didn't work it into this particular slide deck. So this is a percentage of 12th graders, so seniors in high school currently. So in 2000, the percentage of 12th graders, so seniors in high school that had a driver's license, was 87%. In 2022, that number is only 56%. Interesting, right? Why does that matter? Well, if we have internships, if we have experiential learning, if we have things that we want them to get to and they don't have a driver's license, we're going to have to account for that. Like, how is that going to impact them being able to do that? Same group of students, so seniors in high school, percentage of those who had a part-time job in 2000 was 78%. In 2022, that number is 43%. Why does that matter? That exposure of what the world of work feels like, showing up on time, working on a team, that foundational thing, even if it was like what I did working at Kmart, we learn things, we pick up things about ourselves. So that number's dropped dramatically for various reasons. And we can start to figure out, like, why aren't students doing part-time jobs? I'm sure there's a number of variables around that. And then the final thing, which is interesting, is in 2000, the percentage of seniors who have reported that they've dated before was 79%. In 2022, that number is 42%. Now, you might be thinking, why the heck are we talking about dating in a workshop around work and whatnot? Think about connection, think about belonging, thinking about that human relationship sort of thing. And when we look at AI and all of this, like, social media that has come out, maybe 2009 is when it really just blew up in all of its forms. Everybody walking across campus, pay attention to students. What are they doing? They're doing this. And their attention span has changed as well. So weird, right? This is some stuff in there. Now, the students, some of the things that they're really changing around is they have a consumer mindset now. They are expecting that our university runs like a business. We have Niner Central, that's that hub, that switchboard manager, if you will. Students are expecting that we solve problems quick, we help them along the way, and they're getting that return on investment. They want tangible results. They are demanding more engaged experiences. Everything from, I want to do project-based experiences in the classroom. I do want to engage in leadership programs and these clubs and organizations and have that experience. They do want to be challenged. They are less likely to want to sit in a classroom and listen to somebody speak at them, and more so wanting to get into small groups and teach each other this material. And the faculty, and my faculty, they're on this call right now. You guys know this. You guys are becoming, you already are, but facilitators of learning, right? Where it's this co-journey in the classroom of material, instead of, here's a book, I'm going to throw stuff at you and then you have to memorize it and spit it back to me. That's changed the games, and students are reflecting on that. So that's our students. So higher education, what are we seeing out there? So McKinsey, this is one of my favorite articles and one of those ones that really woke me up of, oh crap moment, if you will, for me as a higher educator. And basically, I'm going to paraphrase what they said, but basically they said how they interviewed employers, students, and providers, us being providers, if you will. And they asked them, how many do you feel that students are prepared for the workforce by the time they graduate? I'm paraphrasing it. Employers, they said 42% of them felt that anybody was prepared. I'm going to tell you a secret. Employers have been saying that for like 40 years, and we'll get back to that in a second. Students, only about 45% of them felt prepared for the workforce. And us, when they talked to us, we were like, hell yeah, we prepared them. 72% of them said, yeah, we're preparing them. There's a big disconnect. We as higher educators, and this is not a bad thing, this is just our perceptions, right? We feel that we're doing it, but everybody else is like, no, you really aren't. And so what I'm finding is that about 5 to 7 years ago, higher education really hit this pivot point. We are in the middle of a transformation for our industry. And if we don't pay attention to it right now, the research is yelling and screaming at us, we're going to fail. We're going to mess up. And I think what we're starting to see is this pivot point towards something different. Do I have this magic sphere of what that's going to look like? I don't. But that's where all of us together can figure out what that looks like. So a couple more things. So employers, they believe that competency development is more important than academic major. You see this in our general education. We see this in many other different forms. This is why Suzanne and the Career Center are working on these competency sorts of things, because the academic major is something where you study what you love, right? But these competencies, these are those human development skills that take time to hone and become an expert around. For my liberal arts people, you can give a thumbs up or a, hey, how you doing? If you're on there on the line with me, guess what? Employers believe that liberal arts education is super important. They do love us, right? Despite what you hear from maybe politicians or other, outfits that are out there, liberal arts education is still foundationally important to employers. And I'm going to tell you why, from my opinion. It's because in those sorts of disciplines, you're soaking in knowledge and you're learning how to learn. And these types of skills can be used across many different types of industries that are out there versus maybe finance, which is all about finance, and or engineering or whatever it might be. All of them are important, but the liberal arts thing is very, very important. What they do say, though, is that if you're choosing an academic major in our liberal arts, disciplines, coupling it with something like business or project management or some of those, dare I say, hard skills, makes you even more valuable as a worker or a candidate out there versus just that. So I think what we're going to start to see is a lot of blending of disciplines, a lot of collaboration, more so. And I think our university is really doing well on that sort of thing. A couple other things. So Coalition of Urban Serving Universities. So I'm part of that group, and we did a couple research articles over the past 3 or 4 years. And basically what we have found is that there's going to be a demand for curriculum redesign. We're going to have to do that. We're going to have to look at how we've done things for the past 20, 25, 30 years and try to figure out how do we blend it for the future. New relationships. And what relationships means is we're going to be university industry relationships are going to be highly important. Industry could include not just companies, but major nonprofits and organizations that are out there. Yesterday, I had a meeting with Kaplan about some of the space that they want to fill, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But relationships are going to be very important, and even relationships where we have coalitions of different universities working together and creating these pipelines in a new way. Liberal arts is also the most robot-friendly group that's out there. So another big props for our liberal arts people as well. Okay, one of my favorite articles that I found is actually from the Pew Research Center. So in 2012, they did this, and I kept this article because it said it was going to give us a look at what is 2020 going to look like. And I was like, okay, I'm going to hold on to this article to see what we have. Before I talk about that, though, the purpose of higher education, we always hear from people that they think it's all about jobs. It's not. It's not. It's about human capital development. Now, does that expressed in a job? Of course, right? We don't just, learn material and then sit and watch Netflix. We have to do something with that cool knowledge and skills that we have. It is about research. Higher education will continue to be the powerhouse of development of new knowledge and solving major problems in our society. And then, of course, the third thing, which is fantastic, is access to education, And I'll say that, Charlotte, as you guys know, is that's our core part of our mission, is access for all of America. That's what we are about. It's very different than your Harvards and your Carolinas out there. We are here for the crosswalk of all of our society. Okay, so 2012. Let me rattle off a couple things that they were predicting for 2020. Technology will change how we teach. Digital learning will become more accepted. Boom, right? How about this? Economic realities will drive innovation. It's happening. Nobody predicted this COVID. Nobody predicted all the different things that we're starting to see in the workforce that's out there. Distance learning will become more the norm and accepted. So you think about 2012 and even before then, it was still iffy of like, is that less than, or is it, is it, if you have an online degree, that's not as good as a regular degree. And there was that debate back then. Now it's like every university, including ours, we're racing to make sure that we're in that space. Why? Because students are wanting this on-demand experience. A lot of students may not want to travel to a university. They might want to have something different. I have a student who I just approved an experiential learning experience where she wanted to go do it because it's important to her career. It is critical for her career industry path, but she didn't want to get off track. But at least we have these online programs that allow her to continue to do that. That's that on demand and making sure that it's fitting our students. The frustration for the lack and pace of change will be hugely reported. Yes, about 5 years ago, everybody started calling us out saying that we're not doing our jobs, we're not transitioning or changing our curriculum, what we're teaching students fast enough. And I'm going to tell you, I agree with them. I agree with them. I think our institution here, we do a little bit better than ones that I've either consulted at or I've been a part of. And so I think there's major props for you guys out there on that particular front. So let me give you an example of this change process. Now you can argue with me, but this is going to be generalities. So in order, if you wanted to change your current syllabus for your own class, you could probably do that in one semester so that it's ready for spring 2024, right? Like you can do that pretty quick. There's not a lot of rules and barriers. If you wanted to change the entire course, if it was only one course, you could probably still do that in the semester, get it ready for the next the spring semester or maybe even summer. If you wanted to change a course that has multiple sections taught by multiple or a variety of different faculty members, we're probably looking at maybe a year, right? And you think through all the hoops that you got to jump through just to get that thing going. And then here's the big kicker. If you wanted to change the whole program, it could probably take up to 2 to 3 years, like the entire curriculum for an academic program or discipline. And you look at general education that I redesigned that I was a part of, that took 2 years of conversations, and not everybody was still on board, and we're still transitioning general education for this university. It's just a process. Now think about this. If we had to wait for every single faculty and staff member to agree with the general education path, it would never get done. It would never get done. So 3 years to change something, and employers are like, I need that done last week because these new skills, AI is a perfect example. We need it now. And so when we think about this change process, over the next 10 years, I'm hoping sooner than that, higher education, I'm going to say our institution, we're going to have to be faster. We're going to have to get rid of the barriers, the hoops that don't make sense and keep things moving, or we need to find a better way to do on and off ramps. So what I really am impressed with our CCI folks out there, and Devram, I see you there, is that they are, Alicia, there you are, that they're trying to look at their entire college curriculum stuff and trying to find better on and off ramps so that if a student has to leave after a year or 2 years, at least they have like a certification or something that's sellable to employers, and then they can come back. And I think it's a lot easier for CCI type programs because the world's changing and they're forced to do that, because if you're teaching them something and then they get out of college in 3 years, that something is gone and the next thing's in there, we've just wasted their money, if you will. So I think that whole idea is going to be important. What we're going to find is that if we don't do it, well, somebody's going to do it for us. And so when you start to see some of the trends that I'm seeing out there that's really popped up, I'm going to say in the past 5 years, they've been around here and there, but it's becoming more severe, is that corporations are starting to develop programs and ways to compete with higher education. And 2 reasons for that. One is they need the workforce now, and they're recognizing that there's money to be had because students are mad at higher education for the quadrupling of tuition and fees. And then 2 is because they need workforce. They need that workforce, and we're at what 3.3% in North Carolina unemployment rate. They're going to have to do something. So they're competing with us. Amazon is out there. Google is out there. Yesterday, I met with Cap. Their new idea of, hey, we can provide students with these certifications, and then they don't even need to go to college. And I'm like, hey, why don't we partner together and do something a little bit different than that, where like they can get the certification, but then they're automatically in college, think 49er next, and we keep that pipeline. Because I told them, I said, your idea is valid. I hear it. It makes sense. If I was a consumer, I would say, hell yeah, I'd rather do $2,000 than $40,000. And I can start working now and not have to worry about debt and do all that kind of stuff. But I also mentioned that during the Great Recession, if you didn't have a bachelor's degree, you were pretty much out the door faster than those who had that bachelor's degree. So corporations, they swing back and forth. And I think we need to be honest with our students that there's value in having a bachelor's, associate degree, and all the way up. So it's interesting. Pew Research predicted a lot of stuff that we're dealing with right now. So talent creation versus talent recruitment, it is shifting. It is shifting into this co-development model where industries want to be at the table with us, not telling us what to do, but co-designing projects and curriculum. When I first started at this university, we had the applied technology program with Bank of America. It has since kind of gone away, but that's a prime example of what I believe. This is Patrick talking. What I believe our university should be doing with major employers is co-creating something where students are in college, getting credit, getting experience, and these employers are getting ready-made candidates that they are needing for their particular disciplines or whatever it is they're trying to solve. And then it's also this half-life problem. So what we're finding is that what's more important is that we're helping students learn these human capacity development skills, competencies, more so than the content and the specific skills, because those specific skills are going like this much faster than 25, 30 years ago when I was in college, where, I'm good to go, sort of idea. So what we're starting to find, and our School of Professional Studies is really doing a fantastic job. I see you, Shauna, doing a fantastic job with this, is credentials, micro-credentials. The University Career Center, because of our partnership with Truist, we're looking at gig training programs, many different ways to help students design their college experience. So it's like this choose your own adventure, right, is what it's going to really turn out to be. Let me tell you this. So Coursera and EDX, they did a research report, and this one maybe a couple of years ago, and they found from employers that 90% of companies would hire somebody with credentials and not a degree. So that space right there, they would hire somebody if they got this credential, this proven credential. And this is, again, where School of Professional Studies is really important, is that it's a proven credential. Somebody's paying attention to it. They would hire that person versus somebody who, if they didn't have a degree. So they're really needing to do this. And why that's important is Emergent Education said that by 2030, worldwide, we're going to have a deficit of about $8 trillion in terms of the workforce that's out there. They know this is coming. They know this is coming. And so all of this means for higher education is that experience matters. Project-based learning matters. Making sure that we are paying attention where it's appropriate. And this is where my faculty friends are much smarter than I am. 1 credit hour courses, 2 credit hour courses, and of course those 3. Making sure there's a variety of ways that we can get students moving forward. I'm not sure if I believe in the short-term intercession of like 3 weeks. I mean, that's above my pay grade. 8 weeks, I'm still pretty cool with. Anything below 8 weeks, my personal view is, how much can you actually get in less than 8 weeks? But again, you guys, the faculty on here are much smarter than I am. All right, so faculty, we're starting to see this. We need more efficient grading mechanisms. Now that AI is out, I don't know if you all have started to see things that look AI-ish coming into there. And I don't know, that's going to be an area that we're going to have to pay attention to. This presentation is not about the effects of AI. I'm just saying that it's here, folks. And they predicted it about 5 years ago. Faculty, we have learned from COVID, or all of us who teach, if you will, that we're going to need to be technologically savvy. We're going to need to understand these things that are coming through and try to find ways to blend them or understand how to use them effectively, because our students already know technology and they're expecting that technology. And then the new teaching models, this is again where, excuse me, our teaching and learning, faculty teaching and learning group is going to be a very powerful force on this campus to help us as educators continue to learn to be educators. If we value teaching, then we value educating ourselves on the best practices and moving forward as well. Now, looking at programs, what the research is saying, like academic programs, if you will, curriculum, if you're thinking of that, is one, we need to make sure that is adaptable to workplace needs. That does not mean that we need to hear employers and they say we want these specific things. What that means is sometimes skills, right? So I'm thinking engineers, CCI, but it's going to be more of those competencies, because what employers are saying, the top three things that students are missing, candidates are missing, one is they have no clue how to communicate, writing and oral. Like they suck at it, and it's getting worse. The second thing is they don't have professional presence. Now, that doesn't mean having a nice looking resume. It's not that. It's talking about the nuances that we pick up as workforce people, right? Like when to, chime in, when to learn how to do that kind of stuff. And then the third thing that they say that they are missing is this idea of an agile mindset. So being able to pivot. And what I'm starting to notice from employers is that the Gen Zs that are going out there, and even some of our late millennials, is that they keep asking for specifics, like, what should I do? What should I do next? What should I do next? Instead of having that, well, take initiative and work it out. I shouldn't have to keep telling you that stuff. And Gen X, we're not used to that, right? We're used to just getting it done. And it's hard for us to be, shift into that micromanaging type of world. Competency-based education, it's going to get bigger. I think our campus, and Shauna, you can shake your head, yes or no. We're not really big on that right now. I know this. Okay, good. The state system has been exploring it for a number of years in many different ways. If you want to geek out on what that means, I encourage you to go to cbeexchange.org, I think is what it is. So I've been a part of that group for a number of years in many different forms. And I think competency-based education is going to be something that we're going to have to pay attention to as an institution and figure out, like, what is our stance, if you will, on that kind of stuff. All right, hopefully I'm doing well on time. I'm going to keep going. So the workforce, let's take a look at the workforce. So what's going to be needed moving forward are an agile workforce, people that can pivot, people that can think, people that know how to think and learn. And why that's important is AI is going to make our jobs, and every single job, easier. It will. But what that means is that humans are going to have to develop better skills of sussing out that information, analyzing that information, making sure it's relevant and real information, and how to actually use the information that AI is giving us. But more importantly, there's going to be this new nuanced way or learning need for students to learn how to ask the right questions of AI. So let that sink in for a bit. I mean, we're just spitting crap in there and saying, like, oh, this is wonderful, like we thought Google was back in the day. But you have to learn how to ask it the right questions and then verify the information, and not just assume, like back in the day with Wikipedia, everybody just assumed everything was straight. You have to cross-reference. And that's gonna be a hard thing for students, because they want the information and they go without analyzing that information. The workforce is going to be constantly need to be reskilled. This pace is going to pick up. So most of the research is saying that people are going to be needing to be reskilled in some form or another every single year in the workforce. When we look at the workforce and what's happening is we're going to start to see a movement away from this 40-hour, 40-year, 8 to 5 sort of mentality, and this gig economy that we're all talking about that started really about 10, maybe more than 10 years ago, is going to become much more the norm. And we're already starting to see some employers that are not really hiring full-time employees, but they're hiring contractors for different design sprints or projects that need to be done. And the workers, if you will, are just grabbing gigs to manage their career. So working when they want to work versus a full-time salaried sort of person. I suspect, and some of the research, not a lot of research yet, is verifying this as well, that we're going to see more of a trend in that direction in terms of what jobs are going to look like. Students leaving and becoming full force workforce, they're going to be less interested in the things that tie all of us down, this 8 to 5 sort of thing that we have in higher education. And they're going to be more excited about that work-life balance, which means work when I want to work, earn the money when I want to work, or when I want to earn it, and move on from there. A couple stats, PwC did a research on the current workforce and how they think, and about 60% of the workforce felt or believe that long-term stable jobs are going to be gone in the next 10 years. And when you think about the 90s and even in the 80s and Great Recession, because of the Great Recession, companies just hire and fire, right? They just hire and fire in this sort of thing. What that means for the psyche of the workforce is that they're not going to trust employment. They're not going to trust an organization. They're not going to trust a company. They're going to protect themselves. And so we're going to see a little bit of that as well. On the flip side, Universum found that in their research over the past 10 years that it's going to become a candidate-driven world. We're already there. We're already there. Now, until the next recession happens, it's going to stay like that because of that population drift and things that we're starting to see. And then employers, what that means is that employers are going to have to rebrand and reconnect with the workforce. We say this to our employers all the time. You need to make sure that your job descriptions are sexy and they're not just talking about how much money you're going to make. It's students are wanting something different. They're wanting to know the why of your organization and why it matters to me and how I can sync up with your purpose and whatnot. 80% of CEOs express great concern that they're not going to be able to find the talent that they need. And the reason is because they're not translating very effectively out there. So what does this mean for us? When we think about the workforce, how do we need to change? When we think about the work that we do, we're going to have to think through that it's going to be more about tracking the performance that we have with our constituents based on their experience of us. So when we think about career coaching or academic advising or faculty or the services that we have, we're going to have to look at that performance tracking based on the experience that they are reporting back to us. And are they getting those objectives that they need? Are they getting the service that they need? And are they getting it, in the time that they feel that they need to get that information? For employees, that means all of us. We're going to have to make sure that if you're in the management role, especially, making sure that people are syncing up their own personal meaning of work with the job that they're doing. Super hard, right? Super hard, because motivation is a big thing. We have workforce that just want to go every day and earn $1 and go home, and others that find deep meaning in what they do. And I believe when we look at all of our employees and even helping our students understand the nature of work, it's going to be about them finding that purpose, finding that why, not their passion. Passion is a very elusive feeling for any of my psychologists that are on the line. It's a very elusive thing. We know what brings us purpose, or we can learn it quicker. We know what brings us energy when we wake up in the morning. So I love presentations that bring me energy. Other things don't bring me energy. So I drift in that, the energy specific area. We're going to have to think through this work task planning sort of way. So let me give you an example of what this means. In higher education, and a lot of companies are already making this shift very, very fast. In higher education, when we have an employee leave, what do? We just backfill that full-time position and then just continue on. We do not do a good job of looking at that job description and breaking it down to say, do we still need that job description? Do we still need that particular role? Do we still need whatever it is that they're trying to do, or should we be pivoting somewhere else? We're so afraid that the state's going to take our money that we're just like, hurry up and fill it. And we never really think through, like, what is the next 5 years going to need out of our workforce? So this particular thing, this is a good representation of how my brain works. And this is a few of us have been working on the campus employment, so student employments on campus project over the past few years to figure out how can we look at what needs to be done at this university and then find the right workforce to get those jobs done. So when you think about it, so we have a strategy. We have our university strategy that's here. When we start to work down to what are the tasks that need to be done to accomplish that strategy, we can start to understand what type of employees that we need to get those tasks completed or accomplished. So let me give you an example. We have a lot of technology needs on this campus. One IT needs a lot more full-time staff. They need a lot more bandwidth to get all this stuff done because UNC Charlotte is becoming a technology company like every other company out there. We don't have the budget or the means to get that workforce. But dare I say this in a recorded session, we've got this fantastic college called CCI, right, Devram, that has thousands of students. And probably, Colleen, how many graduate students? Maybe like 800 specific. You can just do a yes or no. Okay, yep, something like that. Who, before they got into our programs, probably have on average 2 to 3 years of professional experience before they decided to do their master's program. Boom! Oh my gosh, what are we going to do about that? Tasks that need to be done. what workforce do we have? And a lot of our international students would love jobs on campus solving our problems, right? So this mentality, it's not just for our university, and I'm going to keep pushing this. This is until I get fired anyway. I'm going to keep pushing this particular thing, but I'm going to tell you, organizations out there, they're already doing this. They're already doing this because money's tight and it's always going to be tight. So the work itself is going to change. So the work that we do with our students is going to change. It is moving away from this idea of we're just going to help students become career ready. Let's do their resumes. Let's make sure they have a bunch of skills, and then magically they have stuff. And moving more towards this idea of helping them understand career optionality, meaning I can choose what I want to study, and then here are all the different options I have out there for myself. This is why the Career Center has career communities, because we want to teach students that you can study psychology, and with the right certification, micro-credential, or whatever you want to call it, you can still go work for a technology company doing some amazing things, right? And vice versa. I had a computer science, I keep picking on my computer science people, but in a good way, right? I had a computer science student that told me that, you know, he loves technology, but he doesn't want to work for a technology company like Google or Facebook, like everybody else. He doesn't want to do that. I'm like, well, what do you want to? I want to solve problems around social impact. I want to get into society. I'm like, and he's like, well, I'm not really allowed to do that because I'm supposed to go to a technology company. I'm like, hell no, dude. Did you know you can use your technology skills solving problems with a company who's all about social impact or water scarcity in Africa or whatever it is? You can find your thing and use those skills for whatever it is that you want. So this means that all of us, we're moving away from career talks, which is panelists talking at students, and moving ourselves, and this is where Suzanne and all the training she's doing for all of us is about career conversations, literally having a conversation with our students to hear who they are, how they belong, what they connect into, and then providing them some better direction. This is why I love our academic advisors, because they do a lot of this in the very small time, right, Alicia, that they have to be able to talk, give conversations rather than what classes do you need next semester. We got to give them more bandwidth to have this holistic sort of thing. And this is why we have career meetups in the Career Center, because workshops are useless. They're so 1990s. Career meetups are all about career, question and answer sessions, really getting students to talk. Interesting note, we always keep talking about in higher education that we need to have a holistic wraparound service for our students. How can you have a holistic service with a bunch of silos on the campus? Think about that for a while. All right, career integrators versus consultants. It is going to be the future of work here is going to be about project-based learning. It's going to be about a heck of a lot more simulations for all disciplines, and all disciplines are going to figure out what that means for them. But students want the project-based learning, the simulations, the partnership sorts of things. They want industry clusters. They want purpose and why. All of this matters because the nature of work after college is projects, is things like design thinking, is things like simulations, is things like teamwork, is things like moving from project team to project team. And that is the nature of work. And if we don't start having double down on those kinds of experiences in college, they're not going to know how to associate it with work. Employers have been reporting back that students are lacking that kind of sense about them. Now, a lot of our programs on campus already, they're already doing the project-based learning. They're already doing simulation. They're doing a fantastic job. Let's make sure that it's across the board. With experiential learning, there's only a fraction of our academic programs right now that have baked in required internship or experiential learning or rotation requirement as part of the curriculum. A fraction. The rest of them are like optional if you want. I don't like that. I think we need to bake it in some way. And it doesn't have to be a requirement for an internship. We're blessed these days with many different ways to provide students with experience that gets the job done. So what does this mean for us? Work is going to be more about the thing that you do than the place that you go, right? Look at all of us working from home. It's not about where we are anymore. We need to hire and train us, and of course, our students going out into the field, to be okay with the pace of change. Change is big. It's always, every minute we're changing. And there's a lot of people that are scared of change. And so the skill of change management for my leaders and my managers on the call, if you are not comfortable with that, go get comfortable with that. Helping people understand and be okay with change. What happens psychologically, and there's a little bit of my background, is when we're faced with change, we get nervous and scared if we don't understand the pathway? What is it going to feel like as we move down that tunnel? And so when we get feared and scared and whatnot, what we do is we complain, we defend, and we blame, right? We put up our walls and we say, we will not do this. General education is a perfect example. Big change. There's a lot of people that said, no. And when you ask them, what's your solution? No, that's not a solution. AI will be a huge vehicle for us, but human interaction, the human skills are still going to be by far, based on the research, more important than AI skills. We still want that. Students are wanting that human connection because they want everything individualized. Now, the work environment, we all know the work environment has changed. Let me just start with that physical space. Everybody's like, yeah, office, work from home, it's fantastic. I sense that higher education, our university in particular, because we're already thinking about this, is how are we processing what space is needed for what, right? So I've seen one channel out there where we're trying to figure out how do we open up more classroom space. I've seen another conversation channel out there of, do faculty really need offices if they're never there? I've seen another one of, well, our academic advisors, the only way they can ever see students is in person. Not true, right, Alicia? And any other advisors that are on the call. We've seen this idea in non-higher education, but it's also playing a part here of how do we set up this physical space so that it provides more collaboration and integration and making sure that holistic thing, getting rid of these silos, is going to be out there. Physical space is going to be big, and where it's placed. Now, some of the pressures that we have is, we have the politicians in the state that we get funding from to make these magical buildings that we have. They expect people are going to do something with that darn space, otherwise don't ask for the money again. So there's this pressure of get everybody back because we've already bought it, so might as well use it. And there's going to be some interesting things there as well. Agile talent management, we talked a little bit about that. Work and decisions. This is weird because in management and leadership research, as it relates to the nature of the work environment, what we're starting to see is that the top-down approach doesn't actually produce as much. This whole thing where the boss tells you what to do and you not having a voice. And so these ideas, decision making is now going to become more of a team effort. And I don't think everybody's ready for that. So bosses, they get scared because it feels like their power is being taken away, right? Employees who are not bosses or leaders or in those leadership like actual job title positions, they feel like, well, it's not my job to make decisions, or I never have my voice heard. So people are going to need training on that and figure out this collaborative sort of decision making and being okay that things are going to change a little bit. So all of this really coincides or finishes up with this idea of like, how do we get ready for the future? So when we think about how we're developing our institution. So Gallup did this really cool research, and what they found was that for all the students that or the graduates, if you will, that they surveyed, for those who understand the purpose of higher education, for those students who understand the purpose of higher education, they are 5 times more likely to say the cost was appropriate. So if we as an institution, everything that we do, if we're not working together and honing what the purpose of UNC Charlotte is and all that we offer and our students that are here, we can do that. 5 times more likely to say it was worth it. They are 6 times more likely to say the institution prepared them for life after college if they have a positive interaction with the career education, not just the career center, all of us. So when they're talking to students about their careers and that purpose and those next steps, if they can feel that connection, that positivity, they are 6 times more likely to say that we cared about them. That's pretty cool. They're 4 times more likely to recommend our institution. So remember that whole student population thing. We need to find students, and we're going to get students from somewhere, right? And North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, we only have so many students, even though we have people still flooding in. They're 4 times more likely to recommend us over those weird institutions like Carolina and NC State. I'm very competitive if you haven't figured that out. And our advancement people, anybody on the call for advancement, they're 3 times more likely to give back, whether it's this or time. And we all know that budget's going to be having a problem, and we should be thinking about that. So all of this, return on investment, accountability, how are we setting ourselves up to understand what we're doing and how we're processing students. There's the life cycle group that's out there developing a process so we can understand the life cycle of a student and all the shiny objects that I call them that have that this institution has, where they actually fall in the life cycle, and how do we know where the metrics of success to move a student throughout this process. If you want to geek out on that stuff this semester, we're going to be sending out more information. All of this is coalescing around the idea of the Charlotte model. It's in our strategic plan if you haven't read it lately. Most people, when you ask what that means, people are like, I don't know. We're developing that. We're developing it because we need to show our constituents this is what Charlotte is all about. And if you're here, this is how you're going to process through. And this is how it's going to feel when you leave this institution. It's going to be amazing. Coordinated Care Network. Becky, I know you're on there as well. This is where we have a lot of data everywhere, right? And I know I'm not supposed to call them data lakes, but it just sounds cooler like that. Devram, you're on there as well. We're trying to connect all of that so we can get a better picture of what the heck's going on around here. And gosh, I would love some CCI students to help us with that. You all work, Colleen, you work on that. But also, there's this opportunity that once we have this data, once we have like the life cycle of student, all the shiny objects kind of organized together, we can see duplications, we can see new collaborations, we can see new networks, we can see a way to help our students with their own unique journey figure out how do they belong and connect in this university. And we can figure out what gaps we might have in serving our students. So a lot of this has been happening with the SSWG over the years, but it's now coalescing around this idea of that Charlotte model. It's the idea of how do we work together, because I fear there's not going to be a lot of new money from the state. I think, I don't have the stat on this, but I believe something I've seen is like over the past 10 years, the funding that has gone to public institutions in North Carolina has like dropped like 25% or something like that. Somebody can Google it and find a better number on that, but it's dropped. It's dropped. And that doesn't mean that people hate education. It just means things are changing. Things are changing. And I believe I'm going to be a positive person on this. I believe it's going to force us to streamline. It's going to force us to look at ourselves to say, how do we do what we do amazingly in a different way? And how do we make sure that we are competitive, not just against other institutions, but about all these other flavors that are out there that are now in the education space, your Kaplans, your EAB, and whoever else might be out there. So university industry partnerships are going to be big. I'm going to say at the end of all this, because I see that Suzanne's about ready to kick me out of here, is that just remember, we have a purpose. Our purpose is not just finding students jobs. It's about finding that purpose, that energy, that connection. And that's what higher education is really about. All of this could continue to change over the next 10 years. There's going to be new articles, new things that are out there. But I'm going to leave you with this quote right here, because this is how I live my life. If somebody offers you an amazing opportunity, but you're not sure if you can do it, just say yes and figure it all out later. I love that. That's higher education, right? Just say yes and we'll figure it out, because I think there's amazing people at the institution. Suzanne, thank you for inviting me. This has been fun for me. I like geeking out on stuff. Like I said, if any of you want to geek out, email me. I'm happy to buy you that $80 coffee that Starbucks charges, and we'll do that. If you got articles or cool things that you've seen out there, send it my way, because I keep building my research of thousands of different articles and other information sources. All right. Thank you. I got to give you 1 minute back.